You may shoot me with your words. You may cut me with your eyes. You may kill me with your hatefulness. But still, like life, I'll rise.
I refuse to accept the view that mankind is so tragically bound to the starless.
Hello, and welcome to the Black News Beat. My name is Dr. Kamika Campbell. This is a special episode. Yes, I'm coming to you a little later in the evening, but you'll see some of the clips after this. So I'm hoping that will be great for you. You can, join me on a journey that I'm on too. And I'm here today as part of a campaign with the state of Pennsylvania. It's called their Get Help campaign. And you may have seen on my channel that I've been running some different graphics and videos. And they haven't got a lot of engagement, but I think the topic is really important. They center around addiction and alcohol abuse and fentanyl addiction and different things. And one of the reasons why I wanted to go live and talk about it is because one, some of the graphics aren't getting, as much play as some of the other stuff on my page. There's so much going on in the world. But during this hard, difficult time that I think we're experiencing together in the country, a lot of us are. Some people are rejoicing, some people aren't. I want to talk about addiction, and I want to do it through the lens of how I viewed my biological father growing up. My biological father was a functioning alcoholic, as it were. This is a term that people disagree on sometimes, but that's what I knew him to be. That's what I knew him to be growing up. And it was difficult to kind of understand that as a child, but as I got older and started coming into my own conversations and into my own understandings of the world, I came to understand what a functioning alcoholic was. And that was my father. And I was very confused to find that out, to understand what it really meant, because I was a daddy's girl for a long time. And understanding how his behavior was shaped by alcoholism was something that was a major blow to my personality. It was a major blow to my personhood. It was a major blow to who I thought I was. So dealing with a parent with alcohol that was experiencing alcoholism was something that I didn't understand until much later, until I started understanding what alcohol was. And I remember learning that alcoholism could be hereditary. And I was terrified of becoming an alcoholic, terrified. And I'll tell you a little bit about my drinking profile. I'm a lightweight. I am not somebody who can consume a bunch of alcohol and like keep working or living or doing the things. So I was very opposite to my father, because I was not the same. I can't consume large amounts of alcohol and like function. If I'm at a party or something, I'm gonna, vomit. I have to really watch my alcohol intake. And I started getting really, really nervous, probably in my 30s, that I was gonna turn out like my father. And what did that mean? Well, I saw my father growing up. I saw him drinking in the car. He would have a cup of alcohol in the car, usually a clear liquor, so it looked like water, but it was definitely alcohol. You could smell it. I saw him get really belligerent when he drank. I remember when I went off to grad school, he came to visit me, and he immediately consumed like 2 bottles of wine on his own, and he began to berate his wife at the time, and he began to really be just a nightmare, and I had to kick him out of my own home. And I'm a woman I think I was approaching 30 at the time. Yeah. So this was really just terrifying, and also just really not terrifying in the way like you're scared of your own father, because like I have a personality where I'm like so sure of myself, but also like unsure, and I was in the presence of my father. Um, I'm really, it's hard to talk about, but I want to talk about this in the sense of addiction. And when do you know to get help? And how do you approach someone like my father, who I was never able to approach about getting help because I felt like it wasn't my place, right? I felt like it wasn't my world to jump into to say to him, hey, you need to get help for your addiction. being a child, being his daughter, and being like a forever child too, right? So even as an adult, I wasn't really allowed to say like, you know, this is this you need help. So when I started getting my own, and no, this is not pre-recorded. I'm literally reading your comments right now, but so you can ask me anything you want. Where if you're just tuning in, we're talking about addiction, we're talking about alcoholism, drugs, and how people experience it. So anyway, I excuse me, I did I did in college, like a lot of us do, experience drinking, experimented with drinking, trying to figure out what drinking was and what it wasn't. Thanks, Real Gino, for tuning in. What was heavy drinking, what was light drinking, experiencing alcohol. Like I didn't have a lot of alcohol until I got to college. And it was very interesting because I wanted to, be in the in crowd and do these things and, really um, no problem. Hombo Logus. Yeah, good night, y'all. But yeah, I wanted to experience these things because I thought it was cool, And so I started to, drink and do these things, but I was always felt like there was a sword hanging over my head. And that at any moment, and I wrote about this on the Black News Beat Facebook page, maybe like last year, at any moment, I was going to become an alcoholic if I wasn't careful because of my father. And this hung over me and has hung over me for years. I also noticed that I would start drinking at heavier times sometimes, like when I was sad, depression, especially in grad school. I began to drink and do things in a way that began to be harmful. And I was experiencing these things in a way that was not fun. It wasn't social. Sometimes I would drink alone by myself and I wouldn't invite anyone over because I was embarrassed. Still not able to drink a lot, but was like drinking in a way that was starting to be, harmful to me. I noticed that my concentration was waning and all these different things, and I was not feeling myself. And even now, like if I drink, more than 2 glasses of wine, the next day I'm like a wreck, right? But I remember the guilt and the shame and feeling all those things and wondering how I was going to um, figure this out, right? And what it looked like, and not being too embarrassed to ask for help. Until one day I got a DUI. This was in 2011. And I had I got pulled over and I had just broken up with someone and I had been drinking and I got in my car and drove home because they had stood me up on a date or something. And I was 2 drinks in. I wasn't, you know, too many sheets to the wind, but um I did get a DUI that night and they took me to the hospital and drew blood and it was a horrible experience. And the next year of my life was like a wake up call because believe it or not, the depression that I was experiencing did not get better. After that wake up call, it got seriously worse. But it was the first time in my life that I got a real serious psychological evaluation in order to figure out how I was going to move forward from here. Grad school was extremely isolating. Um, and it was a difficult time for me because I was trying to figure out who I was as a scholar. I was trying to figure out who I was as a person on my own. I had um, left my church a few years earlier, and I was trying to figure out what was going on in my world. And I remember being forced into getting help, right? And I think that is always a difficult position to be put in. But as a part of my accelerated rehabilitative disposition, which is ARD in Pennsylvania, I had to go to get a psychological evaluation. And from that psychological evaluation, I met my very first full-time therapist who helped me to start looking at my life in different ways. This is the first time this ever happened to me. I'd never really taken therapy seriously before. Maybe I'd done a couple EAP sessions at job when I felt stressed. But this was the first time I had entered into a long-term relationship with my therapist. And this was something that I wasn't sure that was going to work. It was probably one of the best decisions of my life to do that. And it all happened from drinking, getting in a car, getting a DUI, feeling this sense of shame, feeling like I could not get my life together, and finding out in grad school. I was a late grad schooler, so I was like 27, 28, and I I had I was entering this world where I hadn't been in college for a few years and it was really weird, right? And I wanted to be successful. I'm going for a PhD, but I'm experiencing all these like emotional and psychological setbacks I'm not understanding, and drinking wasn't helping. I didn't really do drugs. I didn't do any other kind of drugs, but drinking is what I knew. I knew from my family and from my dad. So getting that psychological evaluation set off a crazy cascade of testing and doctor's appointments and a psychiatrist, for me to land and find out that I was suffering from what they called back then bipolar 2 disorder. Now it's a little different. I think they call it like manic depressive. I don't know what they call it now, but that was my initial diagnosis. And my initial diagnosis led me to understand why I was having these pits and falls and valleys, all the different questionnaires and testing and things that helped me figure out that there was really something going on, and that alcohol was not going to help it. So when we talk about when to get help, and again, thank you for, I've seen the numbers going up and down, but thank you for tuning in. If you're just tuning in, we're here talking about PA's Get Help campaign. It started running through the holidays about 4 weeks ago. And I'm just talking about my experience with alcohol, and with different things, and how I had to get help myself. So and it's so funny because grad school, I remember once I had gotten a DUI, I had found out how many of my friends had gotten DUIs, how many of us were depressed. Some of my friends were on their third DUI and had never said anything, had never talked to anyone, and never did the process that I did of getting a psychological evaluation and figuring out what was really going on, right? So now I'm going through I went through my psychological evaluation. I'm going through a medical evaluation. I'm trying every different medication under the sun that my psychiatric CRMP is trying to prescribe me to figure out what's wrong. I remember my first drug, Celexa, had me up 20 hours a day, so that was wrong. I remember the second drug, Lamictal, had me thrown up on the side of the road, so that was wrong. And we went through all these things until we got to, I think it's Sarah. I forget what it's called now, but it was something for the bipolar disorder, and it helps to kind of like stabilize my mood, right? So I wouldn't swing so hard. That was a very crazy experience because I had never been on any kind of sustained medication. I had never experienced that. I'm going through this with my therapist. I experienced a hospitalization. Didn't know that world, had to learn it pretty quickly. I was hospitalized for some of the things that were happening. And this all stemmed from me, again, if you're just tuning in, getting a DUI, having to get a psychological evaluation and realizing there was something else going on that I needed to address. I remember one of the things that I had to do as part of the restitution for the DUI is I had to go to these classes with other people to learn about like why drinking is bad and all these things and why you shouldn't drink to excess. And I remember one of the things I saw was it was a room full of Black and brown people in a very white area that had gotten these DUIs. And two, there was a whole bunch of us that were like right at the cusp. So in Pennsylvania, it's like 0.08 is the like, you can still get a DUI at like 0.05. But 0.08 is like the thing, is the limit, and you are getting a DUI. And mine was, I think, 0.086, and a friend of mine was 0.078. And then there was one or two dudes who were like, their blood alcohol level was like 0.2. It was insane. All that to say, we're in these classes together, and each one of us, our realization point was, we didn't know that something was wrong, right? We were like, whoa, something's wrong. This is the way that we are understanding that something's wrong now. Um, and it was like a breaking point for all of us. So from that breaking point, we all learned that we really needed to assess what the real underlying issues were and not mask it with alcohol or drugs. And even though I wasn't really drunk when I got pulled over, I can say plenty of times that I may have been drunk or trying to mask a problem with alcohol. And that is when I learned the triggers for me and when I needed to get help. So this PA Get Help campaign, I was really interested in doing it and being a part of it because it's something that was really near and dear to my heart. I've never told the story publicly before. Excuse me, I'm still getting over the flu. And it's important to me to encourage each other and others through storytelling. So how did everything turn out? You know, I talked, if you guys, again, if you're just turning in, I talked about my dad being an alcoholic and how that always terrified me. And I felt like I had a sword hanging over my head. If you ever seen that picture of a sword hanging over somebody's head and that at any moment it can drop and really affect you. I didn't know which way was up by the time I had gotten a DUI, and it took me like a year of not just not drinking, but like I am going through all these medication trials. I'm doing all this stuff. I'm going to a therapist. I'm really trying to get my life together because I really want to, at some point, it was still early in my grad school career, graduate and be a doctor. So I think it probably took until like probably 2012, 2013. I graduated in 2014. Thank goodness, that is the good part of the story. To really understand, you know, what my triggers were, how I was masking my problems, and how to handle it in different ways. And I shout out to my longtime therapist and now friend, Dr. Denise Person, who really helped me through some of the hardest times of my life. Like she really helped shape me and help me understand how I could be a new, real, different, successful person without abusing alcohol. So as I was talking about in the beginning of this video, when is it time to get help? When do you know it's time to get help? And this can fluctuate throughout your life. Like it doesn't end. Like this is a daily journey, everlasting journey to always, you know, dealing correctly with your problems and not putting your own self in danger because you're experiencing an issue or because of depression, and understanding there are different ways to deal with that. So one of the things that I ended up doing was, you know, having a sustained therapist, and even therapy is such a vulnerable thing. Trying to get a therapist, trying to make sure they're a match. This is exhausting. I know why people don't go to therapy. It's not just about, oh, people don't want to go to therapy. It's about being vulnerable. It's about finding a therapist that matches with you. It's about finding a therapist that is going to help you through. I remember I had to fire a therapist, a white woman therapist, because she absolutely, not all white people with me in one of my sessions. And no, we're not doing that in a session that I pay for, but that's another story. Up until that point, she also helped me a lot. But she was showing some signs of becoming a little radicalized with the political climate and things, as many of us become. And I just didn't want that. I didn't want to pay for that. So it's a hard thing to find a therapist. So when people do things like escape into alcohol, escape into different kinds of drugs, it's because trying to be vulnerable with another person, especially somebody who's a professional that's supposed to try to help you, is hard, very hard. So all that to say, and I'm wrapping this up. We're not going to stay here all night to do this, but I wanted to at least have this conversation and talk about why I was doing the Pennsylvania Get Help campaign. It ends tomorrow. I'll be doing one more of these lives just to be like, hey, hello, you know, as we're going, it's New Year. So as we are making our resolutions, trying to live out our resolutions, trying to do the right thing, know that you can get help early for any kind of thing you're experiencing like that, whether it's drugs, alcohol, whatever it is, any other kind of addiction, food, whatever it is. You can get help in a way that's going to honor your personhood, honor who you are, and help you really get to the goals that you want to get to in life. So that's really all this is about. I thank you for watching. Join me in sharing the PA Get Help posts, the Get Help PA posts. They are really important to what we do as a community and how we move forward individually and as communities. And just want you to join me on that journey. And if you need help, you can work with the PA Get Help folks, pa.gov/get help, pa.gov/get help, in order to get the help you need. All right. If you have any questions, I'm always available to answer. There's a lot of things that I didn't know that I began to understand and know to do to help myself and be a better person and become better. And you can too. All right. I'll talk to y'all later. I'll see you soon. We're going to be starting back episodes of the Black News Beat in February for Black History Month, but I'll be on the page, talking like I always do. So I'm excited that that we got to tune in for a few minutes. And if you were watching on Facebook or LinkedIn or Instagram or YouTube, thank you for that. I appreciate y'all so much. And we shall talk soon. See you later.